Alright y'all, time for me to admit something. I know you all see me as a wholesome TVY7 personality who can do no wrong, and I expect to see that on my tombstone, but I've got a secret. There are things you don't know about me that might skew your view forever. Right here, right now, I'm going to come out to you as a droid hater. I've always been a droid hater. Do I like robots? Yes. Do I like androids? Also yes. Do I like a dumb little tin can that just makes beeps and boops and then everyone laughs like it told a joke? No. There are so many moments in Star Wars movies where the punchline of an entire scene is that a little Pringles can or a soccer ball on wheels made a couple of noises. That isn't comedy. That's nothing. We might as well just pan back out to quiet, empty space and have the movie end. What is the point of writing at all if you're not writing anything? Am I blowing this out of proportion? No. If you can spend $447 million on one movie, you can spend at least part of that on screenwriters. Now, I'm not old enough yet to hold office in the United States, but I hope you'll join me in 2036 when I'll be running on a strong anti-droid rights platform. That's right. I'm gonna go all in on ADR, baby. Check me out! Yeah! Anyway, before this joke gets away from me, I think it's important to note that I don't hate the existence of droids in general. I just don't love it when lazy people use them to replace good writing. I love when droids are actually helpful, which they often are in every Star Wars media other than the main 9 movies. How do I navigate this massive galaxy? A droid that just holds big 3D maps. How do I talk to aliens that don't speak the same language as me? A droid that can speak every language in existence. How do I more easily commit murders? A droid that makes people more susceptible to bullet wounds, of course. Which brings us to today's hunter, who actually has a droid that makes people bleed more. Sort of. Hey everyone, my name is Wynton, and today we're gonna talk about Star Wars Hunter's third, and as of Season 3, final support hunter. That's right, it's the Mon Calamar prodigy, Sprocket. Our boy here is some sort of fish lobster person. Best known for being a big ol' meme from episode 6.
It's a trap!
These squiddy boys are called the Mon Calamari, which is what I usually order as an appetizer when I go to a seafood place. Sprocket in particular stands out because he's an accomplished inventor, despite just being a child. How old is he? The game has no interest in telling you exact details, you just need to know that he's a precocious youth. Now, Sprocket's main aspect of precocity is his many droids and drones. In fact, every aspect of Sprocket's kit is droid-based, from his movement to his main attack to his ult. Our boy has a hover chair, 2 blaster remotes, a targeting droid, 2 defensive bots, a medical bot, and even an auto turret. That's a lot of f***ing robots, y'all. I'm gonna go through all of them, don't worry. But we're gonna start with the simplest, and in my opinion, absolute weakest of his drones. Sprocket sits in a little thing he calls his command chair, which is a modified version of a repulsor lift chair. Basically, that just means that it floats. Can Sprocket walk? Definitely. But his little legs are so small that he's like one of those teacup dogs that gets carried everywhere because one normal step for us is like 10 steps for him. Let's not worry about it. Sprocket's chair has a cushy seat and a command panel and even a fold-out cup holder, but its main purpose is truly just to hold this child while he plays on his iPad. Looking at other support hunters, Zaina and Skora both have movement abilities that allow them to easily enter and exit a fight whenever they like. Sprocket has what I would call an uninspired knockoff, with his talent Turbocharged. What is this talent? That's a great question because seriously, what is this? Sprocket gains a movement boost when put to critical health. That's a direct quote from the website. And yeah, I think one of his robots wrote that. If I were to translate this to Galactic Basic, I would include even just a smidgen of actual information. And you know something about that information? This straight up sucks. First of all, critical health means a 40% threshold, meaning Sprocket only gets to use this ability when he hits 80 HP or less. Second of all, the boost only lasts for 3 seconds. That's barely enough time to scratch your nose. It can't even be reactivated or extended while Sprocket is at low health. You have to heal back up above this 80 to use it again. Turbocharged is honestly one of the stupider abilities in this game, especially given the fact that the speed barely increases it over normal high chair movement. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about what actually makes Sprocket good. We're gonna move on to droids number 2 and 3. His main weapons. These are actually just 2 little Jedi training bots, but they've been modded and overclocked, so the game refers to them as blaster remotes. These are simple little bots, and despite the game calling them slow firing and low range, they actually match Sentinel's weapon output and can reach decently far. Even at a reasonable distance like this, it still only drops from 10 damage to 8 or 9. There honestly isn't that much to say about these, except I'm glad that in Season 3 he got another boost that moved his base damage up from 9 to 10. These are heat-based, so you don't need to frantically reload them, but you do need to watch out in case any lightsaber wielders start deflecting them back at you. That was quick, huh? Let's go ahead and talk about drones 4 and 5 now. These little guys are called defense drones, and they're a neat way to give your allies a buff even from pretty far away. While they won't directly heal your friends, they will provide a nice little defense boost. It starts out at a 30% damage reduction for 4 seconds and works its way up to 35% damage reduction for 5 seconds. This is especially nice to throw onto some of your tanks to make them that much more indestructible. The second boost from these guys is the healing increase, which is unlocked after the first upgrade at 10%. At max level, this jumps up to 20%, which is just lovely. Throw this in the right spot and your teammate will be nigh unkillable. Now, the most fun part of this is that while Sprocket does intend to defend his allies, he is also aware of how soft and fragile he is. When you activate drone defense, you'll send one off to a friend and keep one for yourself. This way, you both get benefits. You could even say that Sprocket and his teammate are friends with. The best time to use this is right in the middle of a fight. That way, you can guarantee your hunters the upper hand. The healing boost also stacks with hunters that can heal themselves, like Graz and Char, so they'll be right back up to full even quicker. The one thing to remember here is that even if you don't have an ally targeted, Sprocket can still use this ability. It'll just only send the one drone out to himself. Also, there's a 12-second cooldown in between deployments. Oof. Good so far? Cool. Let's do droid number 6. Looks exactly like the defense drones, right? That's because it is. But this thing is apparently programmed to know who's your friend and who's not getting an invite to your birthday party. Send one of these out to follow your least favorite enemy hunter and it'll switch from the defensive blue to the classic evil computer color, bright red. This one is called a targeting drone, and yeah, that's what it does. Have you ever played a match with Sprocket on your team and noticed that you can see an enemy hunter through the walls no matter how far away they are? That's because they got tagged by one of these. The targeting drone reveals the target to your team, and you'd better pay attention to whoever's highlighted because they take extra damage as long as they are. This starts by hanging out for 4.5 seconds and works its way up to 5.5 seconds, and increases damage taken by 25% 25% at base level and 30% at max level. One of the nicer parts of this ability comes from the final level, where you unlock a boost that imposes a 20% slow on the targeted enemy. It's not immobilizing, but man does it help with stopping assaults and escapes alike. If an ally gets an elimination on one of the enemies that has this targeting drone on it, you'll get an assist, whether you actually did damage or not. Just like the defense drones, the targeting drones have a big ol' 12-second cooldown. Oh, and quick note, applying one of these to a char is not always the greatest idea, because that extra damage actually converts into extra healing when he uses his regen booster ability. Timing is everything. All right, we are on to the last ability now, though it certainly isn't the end of Sprocket's droids. I'm sure you're thinking, isn't this guy supposed to be a healer? All he does is send little flying doodads all over the map. Well, that is where our good friend the medical droid comes in. Skora heals people by shooting with darts, which means precision is important when you're using her. Zaina heals people by throwing a Bacta bomb at her feet, which means that you need to be nearby to gain the effects. Sprocket, on the other hand, he deploys what is basically a sprinkler filled with Bacta, and anyone who can catch some of the spray gets their HP back. Reminds me of being a kid in the summertime. Droid numero 7 here is Sprocket's main deal, and is truly the reason why he can be invaluable in any dynamic control match. It starts with a 5-meter radius, a 7.5 second duration, and can heal 40 HP per second. Math-wise, this means that you can heal a total of 300 HP per person per use. Decent, right? Well, you're gonna wanna max this little guy out right away, because at top level, that jumps up to 5.5 meters for 8 seconds with 50 HP restored per second. That's 400 HP per use per individual hunter on your team. This thing doesn't just heal in chunks either. You're drinking a consistent stream of Bacta. This allows you to basically just absorb bullets as long as you're sitting in the radius. One of my favorite things about the medical droid is that it can literally help you survive a Reeve ult, because she can't do more damage by herself than you can heal with the bot. This is where the healing aspect of the defense drone comes into shine as well, because with that 20% healing boost at max level, you're jumping up from 400 to 480 HP. One last important detail for the medic bot is that you can hold the button down to push the spawn point way out ahead, in case your allies aren't right next to you. Oh, and this thing? 12-second cooldown, just like the other babies so far. Now, I gotta do a quick tangent, because there's something that I probably should have told you about a while ago, but this is my show, so I make the decisions. Specifically, the decision to not tell you things. Star Wars Hunters isn't super obvious about this, but the game actually contains 3 different types of health. Sort of a weird concept. Type 1 is regular HP that every single hunter has. That is the red stuff that comes out when you scrape your widow knee on the playground. Cry not, my child. A nice support hunter can give that back to you, or even just a green health pickup. Type 2 is shield health. These are the white bars that appear at the end of your health bar for characters that have shields like Chaos, Sentinel, and Slingshot. This type of HP can't be restored by anything but pure ol' waiting around. Type 3 is the most interesting one, which is called temp health. This is the extra stuff that you get tacked onto your health bar by stuff like Zaina's ultimate or Skora's stim shot ability. This is also called decaying health, which can only be fixed by brushing your teeth. Sorry, that's dental decay. Decaying HP is what Sprocket's medical droid runs off of, and it's why I think that saying that it has a specific duration is a little misleading. Basically, the droid just sticks around as long as it has any of its decaying health bar left over. The unfortunate thing is, your enemies can directly attack the sprinkler system, cutting its lifespan short. This is, by the way, the correct way to attack the Calamar-er, as you're pretty much just shooting into a sponge by attacking him while he's sitting in the radius of it. The increase in duration is actually technically an increase in HP, but the game doesn't really care if you know that. So, now that I've explained another piece of the game that Zynga just doesn't feel like telling you about, we can move on to Sprocket's ultimate. This thing is called the Ultra Turret. It's, well, it's a turret. Cool. What are you looking at me like that for? Alright, fine, I'll explain the Ultra Turret. The turret, droid number 8, has a decaying health bar, just like the medical droid, so your opponents can put some damage into it to get it to shut down sooner. While it hangs out, it'll automatically fire at the nearest enemy, dealing 25 damage per shot. Over the course of those 10 seconds, if it gets to live its fruit fly-esque life that long, the turret fires about 30 shots, meaning it can cap out at 750 damage if it can land them all. Ready for some bad news? This thing is absolute at aiming. On its own, the turret could never even make it into Beskar. This is why you need to help it out a little bit, and pop that targeting drone onto someone nearby. Unless there's a wall in the way, the turret will not miss someone with the targeting drone on them. And at max level, that damage boost increases those 25-point shots to 33 each. That's a good way to kill someone. And quick. Lightsaber hunters can deflect these bullets, by the way, just like with Sprocket's blaster remotes. It's not the ideal ultimate, but honestly, with how much ultimate charge Sprocket gets just from using his other abilities, you'll be able to pop a bunch of these out on the map each game. There we go. That's it. All 8 of this boy's little inventions. There is another thing he made, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's talk about strategy and Sprocket's strengths and weaknesses. The first thing I need to go over is cooldowns. I'm sure you remember that each of Sprocket's abilities has a 12-second cooldown, and if you don't remember that, that's your own fault for sleeping in class. 12 seconds seems like a long time, right? Well, the nice thing is that that cooldown begins as soon as you activate any of those abilities. Take a look at this nifty little graphic I made. Because the cooldown overlaps with the active duration, you're not really going to be waiting a crazy amount of time to get your bots back out there. Ideally, at maximum level, and assuming that your enemies don't damage your medical droid, you should only be without it for about 4 seconds at a time. The defense and tracking boys will take a little bit longer in between their uses, but that's fine because your main focus should be getting your Bacta Sprinkler back on board. Keep your eye down in the corner. Your team is going to be relying on you for those heals. Alright, now let's talk about game modes. Sprocket absolutely does best in dynamic control and single point control, and can suffer a little bit in some other modes. This is pretty much entirely because you can't move the medical droid around after you've spawned it. Star Wars Hunters, like a lot of hero shooters, has a pretty big emphasis on movement, which means that a completely stagnant point of healing is kind of useless in some situations. In dynamic and single point, Sprocket can cover a large amount of the point with the heal bot, and keep an eye on his allies and enemies alike so he can send his little flying gizmos out. He can do fine in regular power control, but he can only really control one point at a time, and needing to wait 12 seconds to get a new healing bot out makes it a little hard to take another point in the meantime. Interestingly, Sprocket can actually do very well in trophy chase. This is because the game still isn't really about chasing, but mostly about finding a place where you can hole up and keep your team active. Gathering around the heal bot like it's a warm Christmas fireplace is a great idea. Applying the targeting droid onto the enemy that's holding the TR-0 is also a great idea because that slow effect compounds with the slowing effect of the trophy, and the damage boost makes it easier to, shall we say, persuade them to drop it? You know, persuasion via violent murder. Squad Brawl is risky for the little blue boy because there's a lot of movement happening and he can't really keep his defenses up without a tank and the Bacta Sprinkler to keep himself going. This is also where one of Sprocket's main design flaws comes into play. Have you ever noticed that it's easier to deal critical damage to some hunters than it is to deal it to others? Well, The Squiddo here has one big problem in that regard, and scientists would refer to this condition as Jimmy Neutron Head. In simple terms, he is easy to shoot in the head because it's big as Forget tic-tac-toe, you could play Monopoly up on this 6-head. Sprocket is also just not great for Huttball because of all the previously listed reasons. I'm hoping that someday in the distant future, or maybe a long time ago, whenever they end up adding the escort mode, I want to be able to put the medic bot on top of the escortee. That's my win condition. If I can give one last piece of advice, and I can, I would say that you want to play with the full team at all times. And I'm not talking about the other 3 people on your team. I am talking about your personal basketball roster of droids. You'll always have your main 3, I mean, they're literally attached to you, but in an ideal scenario, you have 8 bots on the field. That is 1 chair, 2 remote blasters, 2 defense droids, 1 targeting drone, 1 medical bot, and 1 ultra turret. This is what we call a perfect world. That's what it's like to chew 5 gum. Wow, that took a minute, huh? I really hope I didn't miss anything. I guess I should mention that Sprocket is the only character in the game that has a non-grounded hitbox, which essentially just means that because he hovers, you can shoot under him. Maybe this is compensation for his giant frickin' noggin? Oh right, I was gonna tell you about Sprocket's other invention. But if you're watching this on youtube.com right now, you're gonna wanna go ahead and hit that Patreon link so you can learn just what I'm talking about. Even if you don't want to pay to join, which I can understand, there's still a free tier, which you can join for access to helpful charts and occasional updates and things like that. Thank you so much for watching this one. It took me a long time to put together because I haven't slept in... Go ahead and consider the existence of the like and subscribe buttons. Are these things you'd enjoy in your life? Is there behoovement for you to be gained from the tactile sensation of said buttons? I hope so. Anyway, just let me know your thoughts on this video, either here in the comments or just somewhere else on the internet where I can give it a hesitant and largely afraid glance. Otherwise, I'll see you out there in Vespara. So long, Arena fans.